Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another conversation with Beth and I. Hi, Beth. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Sergio. How are you doing?
I'm doing good because today we're going to talk about the elevator pitch and how to add something that I call the hook. So that's kind of what I have in mind. But before we do that, Beth, how you doing? How you been handling these days?
I've been working, just staying steady and focused and trying to get things done, move the needle and just keep at it, and
Yeah.
and having a lot of fun along the way. Like, what's the point if it's not fun? So just trying to find those little pockets.
Excellent. So let's dive right into the topic of the elevator pitch, which pretty much the main idea behind that, as the word says, is, what would you say when somebody asks you about your work while you're riding an elevator? And I guess depends how fast is the elevator, how much time you have to give that as an answer. And it's something that I think is a very good exercise for us as artists to figure out how we condense, which sometimes is our art statement gets very wordy, and how do we condense that into a shorter paragraph that we can just tell someone in words that they would understand, that they're not expecting an art statement in itself. So Beth, do you have an elevator pitch? What is it?
Are you gonna put me on the spot like that?
Yeah.
Well, I turn fear into joy through the healing power of choice. And I work mostly with women, but I use this in my talks and my art, my comedy. Everything is sort of focused on how do we transition out of this place of fear and into joy. So
I love that. I think that is a wonderful elevator pitch. And so our friends that are here, they had no idea. Beth had no idea I was going to ask her about this. So you just pull it right off.
you have to, and it's one of those things that it takes practice and you
Yeah.
have to tell a lot of people, because what you have to start to do is feel like it feels good and right in your body. Because if you are trying to say something about yourself that doesn't necessarily feel like it's completely aligned with what you're doing, it's going to come out that way and people will pick up on that energy. So
Absolutely. And, there's something that I like to ask that question a lot of times as a curator and as a gallery owner, when artists come to events or to openings and they introduce themselves, kind of a normal question to ask myself, to ask them is, so what kind of art you make, and tell me a little bit more about it. And you can always tell, when an artist is going around in circles trying to put into words, and having a hard time to communicate that idea. And so pretty quickly, by default, I have a short span of attention. So my mind starts to delve into something else while they're still trying to explain. So, but you can always also tell artists, like in this case, you bet, who very quickly are able to articulate, the work that they're doing in ways that is engaging and that people can understand. And that's kind of like what I want to dive in a little bit today into the elevator pitch. So the first thing I would say about the elevator pitch is to sit down and do the practice of actually narrowing down, your ideas on paper, not just on your head, but on paper. Try it out. Maybe you have a long art statement, or maybe you already have an elevator pitch. It might be a good idea to, now that maybe we have a little bit more time, since we're not going to parties, to sit down and rethink of it. Is it still relevant? Because sometimes, an art statement that you wrote maybe 6 months ago now might not be exactly the same thing that you're trying to do. So
right.
kind of refreshing those ideas to the moment of now.
Yeah, because we're always growing and changing, and
Mhm.
we're learning something new after every, piece of work we make or new body of work that we make. And sometimes we get interested in other things through that process. And so I think it's important to know what it is that you are doing right now, who is it that you serve, and be able to say it in a way that's going to make the listener want to ask more questions.
Exactly. And that actually is the perfect kind of a connection to my next point, which is what I call the hook.
Mm.
I had, for a long time, heard about the elevator pitch, and then I adapted it too. And of course, I have my own elevator pitch, which pretty much is about my elevator pitches. When somebody asks me what's my work about, I say, well, my work, I do paintings, based on the figure in an abstract way. They're not portraits, but they represent everyone. And my work is about the cycles of life, from birth to death, and our experience of spirituality throughout those cycles.
Mm.
That's kind of like what my work has been about for the last 18 years. Since my son was born, trying to understand this thing that we call life and how it changes as we progress. And I always kind of ended like right there. So I started to think about what you just said. How can I get the other person engaged in asking and something? So I thought about, well, what if I say something like a little mini story that they would identify with, so that then invites them to that conversation, right? Because sometimes when you say the elevator pitch can be sound like foreign, can be sound, if they're not an artist themselves, they're like, well, that sounds pretty cool, but I'm not an artist. There's a distance, right? So the hook is the idea to now grab you closer. So what I came up with, for example, my hook that I do is, if Beth was to ask me, so what do I do, right? So I give her my quick 3-sentence elevator speech, and then I would say, it is kind of like this, remember, like when you are in a room by yourself and you're writing a letter or you're in your computer and then somebody walks in the room, but you don't hear them, but you feel that presence, and then all of a sudden you turn around. Or when you're driving, right, and you're at the stoplight and then you feel like somebody's staring at you and you're like, wow, that person is looking at you. That moment, that presence is exactly what I try to, explore in my work. So immediately the person, that I'm talking, like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, right? Because we have that common ground.
Yes, I can totally understand. And what you're doing is you're tapping into their feelings and emotions too, by sharing a story with them that we can all relate to. And I think that really helps draw people in when you are speaking to their emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we all relate to story, right? And the stories, the moment you start kind of bringing a concept into a little story that is common to us, then that's when the engaging, happens, and then the conversation. And not only that, but also it kind of relaxes the conversations, brings usually a smile in their face, or like, oh yeah, I felt that before in some way or fashion. And it's not go ahead.
Well, a lot of times people don't know a lot about art, and they sometimes feel anxious to admit that, and they don't want to seem like they don't know about art, and they don't even know what types of questions to ask. So however you can ease that for them, I think is really important.
Right. And so another point I would like to also suggest to our friends, after that they have already gone through that process of writing all kinds of ideas down, and maybe think about a hook that they could use, then to actually test it, right? Take it out to a difficult crowd. And to me, the most difficult crowd is like a 10-year-old kid who's going to tell you the truth.
Thank you. Oh.
So, try it with people that with your friends, and yes, with children. You will be surprised sometimes how much children engage on interesting conversations with you.
I know I used to tell jokes to my niece and she would say, that's not funny.
Yeah, they're good critics.
Oh, no. And what I've told people too is, like, when you have some ideas about how you want to share about what you say about yourself, think about it as trying on a bunch of different jackets at the store. Like, not all of them are going to fit. Not all of them are going to look the way that you want them to look. Like, so just try on a bunch of different phrases, ways of phrasing and telling those stories, and just experiment with it and see what feels the best in your body whenever you're sharing it with a stranger. Yeah, and you'll be able to see in their response too how much they are understanding what you're saying.
Exactly. And I think that leads me to the last point, which is, don't try to sound smart, just be you. Say the words that you normally speak with. Don't try to sound fancy, or that, even if you are in a crowd that might be intellectually, advanced in some way, still, be yourself. Don't try to impress. Sometimes when we try to impress, we actually make fools of ourselves, right? But rather be authentic, speak the way you talk, and then share your ideas. So those are the 4 points I would like to share with my friends today, Beth, so that hopefully they can refine their elevator pitch, they find a hook that they can work with, they can test it with their friends and with kids too, and that they can also sound authentic in their communication.
I love it. Great list.
Excellent. Well, well, Beth, where can our friends find you and connect with you in social media before we go?
You guys can find me online, Facebook and Instagram, and on my website at bethenglish.com, and my handle is at bethenglish on all the platforms.
Excellent. You can find me online at Sergio Gomez online, and you can find me on Instagram at Sergio Gomez Art. Have a great day, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Beth and I will be here waiting for you. Goodbye.
Bye.